At a glance, Stellar Blade seems like a fairly standard action-adventure game, with linear levels consisting largely of fast-paced combat that would be another for the decent game with great graphic spin. The game, however, defies initial impressions greatly. The combat is some of the smoothest in the genre, mixing the lock-on strategic dueling of Bloodborne with the freedom of Nier Automata. On easy, dodging and defending will get you through pretty much everything, and a very average player should have a moderate challenge, while precision dodges and parries become far more important on normal, and its difficulty will feel more in line with a standard Souls-like. More importantly, the game has great combat flow and is highly rewarding, having numerous benefits beyond avoiding damage. Precision dodges and parries recharge the energy used for special attacks, which can off-balance a foe or put you behind them, allowing for a few safe blows. It can expose their weak points, and getting enough of them can cause a complete stagger, permitting an execution for massive damage. All of these different benefits to mastering the combat system makes it so battles will actually be faster on normal for someone who is nailing the timing over someone on easy who is not, avoiding the typical pitfall of higher difficulty simply meaning damage sponges. Simply put, it feels satisfying to play the game well. Dodges and parries are more generous than what one might expect from a game like Dark Souls. However, there is a catch to this, with even normal enemies often having combo attacks, and bosses constantly unleashing barrages that require attentiveness and consistency. Enemies come in many varieties and numbers, wandering about dungeons and open areas alike. Early on, foes are fairly simple, while later there are more packs and patrols to worry about. There is a fairly steady ramp in the challenge, with few spikes and a general feeling that each new area makes it a bit tougher without being unreasonable. While the combat system, especially the parry and dodge, are best suited for fighting a single foe, there are abilities and consumables meant for group fights, giving the player tools to handle all situations. There are large combat trees where abilities can be chosen and enhanced, as well as an optional tutorial to test individual skills. Though it is less about choosing a build and more about choosing what to buy first, as eventually one can fill out the entire tree. There is, however, a respec item if any errors are made. As well, there are upgrades for a secondary weapon, items like grenades, and ways to increase gear slots, replenishing potion charges, max health and energy, and weapon damage through finding collectibles. Level design is the most delightful surprise of Stellar Blade. Character movement is quick and feels natural, with climbing, swimming, and jumping controlling flawlessly, like a Tomb Raider game done well. It is very old school in the amount of freedom given. Even in more linear dungeons, having plenty of areas to simply explore and search, and contrasting wildly with Western cinematic corridor games. Stellar Blade boasts large maps to explore with side quests along the way, and cinematics between zones and around the bosses, instead of cutscenes linked together with halls and battle rooms. Most of the game is either exploring things or fighting things, and how much of either one participates in is largely at the whim of the player. Many monsters are avoidable, and while helpful, the bulk of exploration is unnecessary, yet both are enjoyable and rewarding in the sense of both how it feels to figure out how to reach something and picking up whatever that something ends up being. Little puzzles are frequent and sometimes not obvious, such as moving objects around to reach a ladder, or finding an explosive to blow open a wall, or something hidden under crates. If something looks suspicious, it almost always is and has something to offer. While upgrades are one such reward, another is cosmetics. Stellar Blade has one of the most impressive wardrobes of in-game earnable cosmetics, not only surprising for quantity, but in the quality of it. Eve, the protagonist, has several accessories, haircuts, and outfits that aren't simply color swaps. Seems like a fashion designer worked on this, as she has bodysuits, skirts, sweaters, casual outfits with jeans, different types of dresses, and more. Between hair and fabric physics, there is too much effort put into making the game look good. So much that my initial expectation of the game was that it was going to be a pretty shell to an otherwise average experience. There is a great visual design in NPCs and enemies too, with many having a touch of Dead Space, Eldritch Horror, and fantasy monster in them. Environments are lush, the music is beautiful, and many areas have visual cues that point you towards possible hidden treasures. Animations are more than just a cherry on top, being sleek and stylish in a way that needs to set trends. Eve being highly acrobatic, while hulking monsters show their weight with impactful strikes, and more slender horrors wriggle and undilute in unpleasant ways. Failing a parry looks painful. Being hit by a beast bigger than a truck sends Eve flying, while finishing blows and executions are worth it as much for the style as for the burst of damage. Eve often using momentum and the weight of her enemies to bring them down and shred them. Cutscenes are regularly integrated into combat and exploration fluidly, capping off a battle with something flashy or introducing a new story element. Overall, the visual design both still and in motion is amazing. Eve is highly athletic and assertive, taking on monsters that petrify others with fear, while making traversing rugged terrain seem effortless. All sorts of small touches show attention to detail, such as she will adjust a brace against an object, her hair accessory turns both into her sword and into an ascender to zip up ropes, the drone can be used as a weapon, and there are different animations for just about everything, including a different animation for going up a rope or a ladder as there is going down. While not extensive, there is some mature content as well, introduced fairly early on with a bit of gore, and even some limb dismemberment, giving the world a bit of a grim feel. Stellar Blade focuses on the angel Eve, who is an aerial combat unit. There is a lot of imagery that draws from culture and post-apocalyptic settings, with the most obvious comparisons being to Nier's 2B. Dropping from space in the first scene amidst ground retaliation that takes out most of her squad. She is a stoic and business-oriented soldier, a bit kind, naive, and practical. She tries to help others, can quit back, and is surprised to find on the surface how dire it is for the human survivors that huddle in a broken down city, going into a deadly wasteland to find scrap, and often not returning. Like a Fallout vault, stories are often told in Stellar Blade through the memories of those who lost their lives, often to monsters, but sometimes in far more tragic, relatable tales. There is desperation, apathy, hopelessness, and madness. Sometimes the most the living can get is a bit of closure on what happened to friends and family. These stories are told through side quests, codec entries, and environmental storytelling. All besides the main story where Eve seeks the strongest monster, hoping killing it will hamper humanity's foes. It is the type of story that presents something, not telling you what to make of it. And much like the popular Dark Souls trilogy, it is extra world building that can be as easily delved into as ignored. Stellar Blade is a game that impresses in every way, an obvious Game of the Year contender in a year which is already stacked with some amazing releases. This is a game that does it all well, not only coming out of nowhere with better game design and graphics than far larger, wealthier AAA corporations, but doing so without microtransactions. It has a large amount of accessibility options, including some greatly appreciated ones for motion sickness, as well as many languages and other customizations. The difficulty options should make the game widely approachable, and there is an extra challenge modifier, as Eve's most revealing outfit also deactivates her protective shielding. This game is especially recommended to those who like action-adventure games, Nier Automata being the closest comparison. Those who enjoy the exploration of games like Zelda and Dark Souls, or combat of Bloodborne and Devil May Cry may find a lot to enjoy. This is a game deserving of a sequel with visual, level, and combat design that feels both fresh and familiar. If you enjoyed the demo, it only gets better. A casually paced completion run may be 60 to 80 hours, with the bulk being in side activities. Also, it has a pretty good fishing minigame. Stellar Blade earns a 9 out of 10.